Kim Pham, and I'm a screenwriter and filmmaker and English tutor from Western Sydney. I just wanted to start off by thanking WestWords for giving me the opportunity to be a 2021 Western Sydney Emerging Writers Fellow and pairing me up with the most incredibly talented, wise, and kind mentor I could have ever been paired up with. So I am so, so grateful. So a little bit about myself. Last year was a year of many firsts for me. Mid last year, for the first time, I was successful in applying for something, and that was when I was selected to be a part of the Writing Zone, which was a mentoring program for emerging writers from Western Sydney, managed by the Writing and Society Research Centre in Western Sydney University. And my creative piece, along with everyone else's, was published in a digital chapbook, which was really, really fun. I also made a short animated film for Diversity Australia for their I Am Not a Virus campaign, which tries to spread awareness, the increase in discrimination against and hate crimes against Asians and Asian Australians as a result of COVID-19. So now for today's workshop, I'd like to discuss creative writing and how to elevate your creative writing with intention. Now that's a lot to unpack, but I'm going to try my best to pick it apart and so we can learn together. So first off, I'm just going to share my screen so we can take a look at the things that we'll be going through in this workshop today. So, creative writing with intention. So I've scheduled this program to be, we'll go through like two main parts. The first part would be going through what is creativity. Second thing is how to elevate your creative writing skills. And then I've sectioned that part off into write what you know, write with intention, and lastly, show, don't tell. And so we'll end the workshop with a few writing exercises. So we'll kick off the session by thinking about creativity. So what is creativity? That's a really, really big question with many, many different and sometimes disagreeing interpretations. So in the old days, we had a more hierarchical idea of who could achieve creativity or who could be creative, and those were often like the geniuses or the prodigies of the world. So to be creative was something almost like God-given, only for the select few. So Shakespeare, Mozart, Picasso. But now in the modern world, our understanding of creativity has changed quite a bit. But then again, like it hasn't entirely erased like the old remnants of like what we think about creativity. So according to Wikipedia, creativity is a phenomenon whereby something somehow new and somehow valuable is formed. The created item may be intangible, such as an idea, a scientific theory, a musical composition, or a joke, or a physical object, such as an invention, a printed literary work, or a painting. Now, that's not a bad definition, but according to Professor Margaret Bowden, there's a little formula for creativity, and that is novelty plus utility plus surprise equals creativity. Looks pretty simple, so let's unpack that together. Novelty is something new and original. Utility is something that is useful and valuable. And surprising is something that is, say, that's bold and worthwhile. And the cool thing is Bowden's definition of the nature of creativity is not just limited to creating or in search of something like grand, like scientific theory or a musical composition or novels or writing novels or doing paintings, but it's trying to say that we are all creative individuals, every single one of us. and we're all creative in our own way, and in the things that we do every day as well. It could be cooking and not having the right ingredients, so we improvise. I think problem solving is a big part of being creative. Gardening, playing games, doing tricks on your skateboard, looming and knitting. I think all these things, all these activities can be very creative, and I think it's really important for us to understand that we are all creative in our own different ways. Now, in this session, I'm going to be focusing on creativity, but not in like looming or like gardening or anything, but specifically in writing. So now I'm going to move on to our second point, which is how to elevate your creative writing skills. So, and one thing to keep in mind is that formula for creativity that we just talked about. So the first thing is write what you know. So it's been said a lot in English classes, I know, but I think it's true that to create something that is like really engaging and authentic, it needs to come from you, from like really deep within you. Because I think if you think about it, every story out there is based on a true story. So what I mean by this is like, imagine you wrote a story about an individual whose dream was to become the greatest martial artist there ever lived. But you're clumsy and you're not that athletic, and you don't want to let your dad down because he dreams of you inheriting the family business noodle shop. Like, the odds are stacked against you because you're also a panda. Now, the writers of Kung Fu Panda were not pandas, and despite the story being set in like a land in ancient China, the writers were not Chinese. But the films were a huge success in not just America, but in China too, because it showed a deep appreciation for Chinese culture, history, and lore. But beneath all that, the story deals with universal themes that we can all relate to, no matter where we come from. And that's what I mean by like when I say write what you know, because we all have or will at some point in our lives feel not good enough, that we're not strong enough to fight for our dreams. But Kung Fu Panda teaches us that we need to work with what we have, and that one person can make a world of a difference. So you can write a story about like a three-legged, four-headed Martian from another galaxy, even though you may not know what it feels like to be like an interterrestrial being. But if you inject yourself and your own story into this alien, channel your inner voice into your creation, you may find yourself relating to your character, and chances are so will your readers. Another way to elevate your creative writing is when trying to write, try to write your characters with flaws. No one wants to read about a character that is perfect at everything, sets out a goal, achieves it because they're beautiful, smart, strong, and loved by everyone, and like nothing and no one stands in their way. Like, it's kind of boring. So in literature, a character flaw is usually like an undesirable trait in their personality. We have minor character flaws. So these are just like physical or mental quirks in the character's personality. It doesn't really affect the plot too much. It's usually used as a way to make the characters like more memorable, or like just kind of like give some like a little bit of comic relief to the story. It could be something as simple as a character breathing too loud, or a character not liking people that breathe too loud, or spits for no reason, or never finishes their food on a plate. These little details add to the characterization and kind of flesh out your characters more, so it makes them seem more real. Then there are major character flaws that come from like life-changing events that affected the character. So for example, like you might write a parent who's like obsessively overprotective of his son because he saw his wife be eaten alive. As a result of his behavior, his son gets lost and he has to swim across oceans to save him. Who knows who that may be? Marlin from Finding Nemo, you know? So things like that, it's like, oh, even if you're not a parent, I guess you could relate to, having having maybe gone through something like traumatic and then feeling like really really scared of losing a loved one. Like that is a feeling, like that feeling of loss, and that fear is can be something that drives you to do certain things, and like you can relate to that. You're not a fish, but you can relate to those feelings. Next thing, now then you have fatal, like, if character flaws that are fatal flaws. So these are the ones that like make or break the character. And these flaws, they need to like overcome, or else they'll die. So Shakespeare's favorite. Yeah, so those are the flaws, and by giving your characters flaws, it just makes them so much more realistic, because as humans, we are not faultless. And yeah, next. Now that we've come to the end of the Write What You Know section, I just want to remind you of the creative formula again. Novelty plus utility plus surprise equals creativity. The reason why I want to like go back to that is because I believe that like when you write something that you know, like when you write what you know, and only you know, and yeah, only you know, you write something that is truly novel and new, something that is uniquely you, that's like imbued with all your personal experiences that are dear to you, that have touched you or changed you and shaped you into the person you are today. So now to our next point. What does it mean to write with intention? I think the foundation of any good story is a visible goal, but equally is the inner journey of the character. A good quote I'd like to show is, "The story happens inside the character." Now, what does that mean? Let's take a look at Mean Girls. Great movie. A group of friends who have been bullied by the school's most popular girl bands together to dethrone her. So that is the outer journey. Like there's clear motivation, and they have a plan. The inner journey is when Katie starts doing all these questionable things, and it makes her, and I guess the people around her, start to question their own intentions and whether dethroning her will bring peace and equality to the school, or will it just breed a new group of mean girls. So that's a character's want. Katie's want, a character's want, is a surface level goal, but what they need is a lesson they learn through taking the journey to acquire what they want. And the lesson is usually almost always how misguided their initial want is. So it's really important to have, or to write, to write an active protagonist, one that is always in pursuit. What do they want? How hard are they going to work to get it? What might they need to sacrifice to get what they want? And if they don't get it, what happens? What are the consequences? The last point is particularly important because it raises the stakes, the consequences of failing. If your character doesn't care about failing, why should the reader or the audience care? Now, that's all well and good, but it's all well and good when a character has a goal. But it's also equally important is that you set up, what will happen if they don't have it, or achieve it easily, because it perfectly mimics life. Nothing worth having is easy. A really great quote that shows this is, "Be a sadist. No matter how sweet or innocent your leading characters are, make awful things happen to them in order that the reader or a viewer may see what they are made out of." So what your character chooses to do, their actions, that is what defines them. And that is how the story moves forward. Another important part of writing with intention is asking yourself, why you're writing the story. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to teach the audience? Or what are you trying to make them, question about like certain things about society or question about themselves? Maybe both. I think it's really important to have like a reason or some intention behind your writing. It could be as grand as director Bong Joon-ho's Parasite to reflect the class and wealth disparity in our modern capitalist world, or it could be like Forrest Gump and the importance of kindness. Now, again, let's go back to that formula. Um, Novelty plus utility plus surprise equals creativity. Because I really do believe that when you write with intention, you're writing something that is truly valuable. You're writing something that has utility. Whatever your intentions may be, I think it's important to have one, because if you want to write, if you want to say something in your work, whether it's a shout or a whisper, it is an act of rebellion and of hope. So, now that we finally arrived to our last section um, of this workshop, it's the show don't tell, which involves a writing exercise. So get out your pens, papers, pens, pencils, or just your Word doc, and we can begin. So, show don't tell. Show don't tell is a writing technique in which story and characters are related through sensory details and actions rather than exposition. It fosters a style of writing that's more immersive for the reader, allowing them to be in the room with the characters. In his most commonly repeated quote, Chekhov said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of the light on broken glass." In short, showing illustrates while telling merely states. You've probably heard this loads of times in English class, but it does have merit in repeating it because it is a really effective way of elevating your creative writing. This is an example of telling rather than showing. So telling would be the rose began wilting because no one watered it. So that would be telling, because you're telling the reader it's wilting. Okay? And then you're even telling them why, because no one watered it. So it's like, you're just stating the facts here. Whereas showing would be the rose rested its sullen head on the pot, waiting to be adored. Now, the first one, the telling one, doesn't have any techniques, whereas the second one does. Metaphor, right? Because it's like the rose has a sullen, sad head, and it's like waiting to be adored. Like, it just sounds a lot more poetic. And it just like after you read it, it makes you just want more, and it's like really showing. So yeah, like it's just think when you show it's yeah when you write and show more, it just makes you feel like you can't. It's not just you see it, but you can also feel what the rose is feeling. Whereas just telling, it's just stating what it is, and it's not very suggestive. Yeah, and it just makes it feel a lot more imaginative when you try to show, which is a lot harder. It definitely is. Like it took me like 2 seconds, probably 5 seconds to write that first one, and it took me probably 10 minutes to come up with the showing one. So it definitely takes a lot more work, but it's worth it. So when you tell rather than show, you kind of like, again, like I said before, you simply just inform the readers of information rather than making them imagine it themselves. So you're just kind of like supplying them with like, it's like a report. The character is tall, they're angry, they're cold, they're tired. And that's just telling. But if the character is tall, the reader can assume that because you mentioned that when people are talking to them, they're looking up, or the person has to duck when they get into a room, or when posing for a photo, they have to like kind of position their bodies in a way that like isn't awkward because they want to get their whole bodies in the picture or something like that. Or if a character is angry, like their face can be flushed, or they're slamming their fist into the wall, or the voice is they're screaming or they're shouting, or their throat is tightening, or if they're cold, don't tell me they're just cold, or they're freezing, or they're frosty. Um, like have them pull their collar up, or tighten their scarf, or shove their hands in their pockets, or turn their face away from the biting wind. I don't know, So when you show it, just more like there's just more to it. Yeah, so etc. Another one is when they're tired. So I'm saying that they're tired, you can say that they yawned, or they groaned, or their eyes are puffy, or their shoulders are slumped, or someone, like through dialogue, someone can say, "Oh, did you sleep last night? You don't look too good." So when you show rather than tell, you make the reader a part of the experience, rather than just having them simply like just absorb it, just read it. They can actually like really imagine it and feel it in their mind. Now, what we're going to go on to doing is some writing exercises. So here I have 4 different sentences that just tell. So we have: the old man sat in the restaurant eating breakfast alone. So Melinda wanted to impress her parents, but she wasn't very good at cooking and burnt all the food. It's a lot packed in that sentence. So like keep in mind that when you do write these, well, what I'm going to ask is that you convert these into showing. So these are all one sentences, but keep in mind that feel like when you convert something into showing, you often write more, which is good. And there's a lot to unpack. One is Melinda and her dreams of impressing her parents. So how are you going to show that? How are you going to show her not being good at cooking? Fumbling, cutting herself maybe, um, um, water boiling over the pot. Yeah, and then obviously the result, burning all the food. Maybe you might want to even include in that, like in your version, what the parents' reactions are. Are they impressed, or are they happy about it, or are they just like disappointed? Don't know. That's all for you to kind of like make up, and it will be your own piece. It will be really, really cool. 3, the firefighter tried really hard to rescue an old lady from a burning building. Okay, so this is tense. A lot of tension in this one. And I feel like this one is especially like you have to like kind of build the scene a lot, and then you kind of maybe want to write from both point of views, like what the old lady is feeling, what's she going through, and the firefighter, or just one. Up to you. But there's loads to unpack with just one sentence, and you can tell because it's like really telling. Tried really hard. That's telling. How can you show that he tried really hard? Is he like, um, using his body, bulldozing through up it all the way up the flight of stairs, and it's just this is what you can do with like showing is limitless. 4, the dog sat waiting for hours by the window for his favorite human to return. A less tense one, but kind of sad. Yeah. So what I'd like you guys to do, I'll probably give you should take you around 10 minutes to work on these 4 examples, and when you're done, it'll be good to see what you come up with. So, see you back here in 10 minutes. Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you all did really well. I bet you did. And I hope you had fun. Now that we've come to like the end of our very last section, which is show don't tell, I want to remind you again of the creativity formula: novelty plus utility plus surprise equals creativity. So showing is much, 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 much harder than telling. It evolves. It involves like I feel like a lot of like keen observation and reflection of the world around you, the people around you, and you trying to translate everything that you feel and think and see onto the page um, in not a telling way. So it's really, really hard. And the thing is, it's not always going to work. Sometimes it won't work at all. And sometimes your expression just like won't make sense. But with enough practice, the creative discoveries that you'll find make that you'll find and make as a writer will surprise you and the reader. Like I feel like readers are smart and they know when something is cliche and they know when something was written with a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I think when you practice showing more in your writing rather than telling, you are taking risks in order to write something that is truly unique, truly surprising, and truly unexpected. So I hope that this workshop was helpful, maybe even a little bit. I don't know, because a lot of it I know you've all heard before. But I thank you for taking the time and watching my workshop. I hope you have a great day and stay safe. Thanks, WestWords. Yes, bye.